And welcome back to another episode of the Goal Line Stand podcast, coming to you live on Tuesday night, September 5th. Week 1 is wrapped up, and we're here to recap it all. That is Coby Reed. I'm Jackson Caldwell, and man, how you feeling? We finally got Week 1 in the bag. Everything is done, and we got two more days till more football.
Brother, I love it. It feels so good to be back. Football is in the air. We had an amazing first weekend. Granted, there was a couple marquee games, but also we got to see some teams we had questions about. But honestly, I think we talked about it a little bit before the pod. After week 1, I have more questions than I have answers, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of sometimes the way it works. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell everybody now, there are going to be things that we're going to look back on week 1 and we're like, maybe we jumped the gun a little bit. There's always overreactions. There's always something in week 1 that maybe you think is right that turns out totally wrong. And, you know, that's just part of college football. So we're going to start with the Labor Day game night. And before we do that, if everybody watching this video, like and subscribe, we would really appreciate it. We're growing here, and we love talking ball with you guys. So it would mean a lot to us if you could like and subscribe to the channel, like the video. We're going to be bringing you more content. But we got a couple of Tigers that disappointed this weekend. I guess we'll start with Clemson last night. Started as a 2-touchdown favorite against Duke, and if Duke doesn't muff a punt, I don't know that they score a point last night, which granted, they had a lot of red zone turnovers because Clemson actually had a high success rate. They did move the ball a little bit, especially in the second half, and got the ball in the red zone, but you had fumbles. You had a 23-yard missed field goal, and Duke cashed in. I have to come clean. I was not a big Duke fan heading into the year. I thought they were getting a little too much love. But, man, you can't say enough about what Mike Elko has done. 2 years ago, they were 3-9, giving up 40 points a game. 2 years later, they're beating Clemson on a primetime stage and holding 7 points. And Clemson was lucky to get that. It was not a good debut for Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator. Cade Klubnik was missing a lot of throws out there.
Yep.
Like I was telling Coby before the show, I can't remember the last time I watched a Clemson team and thought, they look slow. They don't look athletic at all. And they're and no disrespect to Duke, but when Duke is sitting there saying, we're just going to play man coverage. If you beat us on the outside, fine. We're going to try to commit to stop the run. And Will Shipley got his, of course. He's a really good player. I think he's a really good player on that offense. Clemson couldn't find anything to do. And I just think Dabo's going to have to take a long look in the mirror after this and change. But I'll get your thoughts I feel strongly about Clemson. I'm out on them completely right now.
I was very skeptical about them. I even had them as my most overrated team in the ACC in our ACC preview. And it's not because they lack talent. Don't get that twisted. They have a very talented team. I still think they have a very talented team, but there were so many question marks offensively that I think we saw come to fruition against Duke. Will Shipley is the only playmaker on that offense, and I say that confidently. I mean, he had a great game. He had 114 yards. He averaged 6.7 yards per carry. He's the only person that scored on their team. Outside of that, Bo Collins was not what I wanted him to be. Cade Klubnik, I mean, he threw a pick. He only had 1 touchdown. He only had 209 yards. And this is against a team that me and you both thought wasn't going to be overwhelming defensively. We didn't think that they were just going to have a very tough defense. But like you said, Duke held them to 7 points, and those 7 points were iffy. Clemson is going to have to really, really take a step back. Some of their philosophies, some of their ideals, it's going to have to change, and that does start with Dabo. I'm not going to sit here and say their season is an end because we've seen this happen where Clemson loses to an unranked team early. They still find a way to make it to a national championship, but that is with a guy like Trevor Lawrence at the helm, when you still got guys like T. Higgins. When you got dudes at receiver, it makes it a little bit easier. I don't think they have that this year.
I definitely know that they don't have that. Just looking at them, it was just jarring to see. And Dabo pregame, he was talking about, they brought Garrett Riley in to run the Clemson offense. And I'm already thinking, all right, what is this? That is not something you want to hear, especially because the Clemson offense has stunk the past few years. And
And meanwhile,
Maybe
DJ,
we were all a little harsh on DJU, man.
yeah, DJ had a good day. So I mean, proof's in the
He had
pudding.
5 total touchdowns as Oregon State's QB. So, like, man, the thing is with Clemson's schedule, you're already behind the 8 ball in the ACC conference loss. You have to play Florida State in a few weeks, and we're going to talk about the Seminoles in a minute, but I don't see them winning that game at all. And, they have to play North Carolina.
And if I'm being honest with you, I don't see them beating Notre Dame either.
That's what I was getting to. Like, North Carolina just got 9 sacks against South Carolina. Like, is that a South Carolina thing? Maybe, but
at least they proved that they could do it.
Like, it's not like they went out there and got one and we're still sitting here scratching our heads. Well, can North Carolina play defense? They showed they could. Now, maybe they were just overmatching, but we'll get to that game in a little bit. Miami defensively looked really good week 1. That's going to be a tough game on the road. Playing Notre Dame.
Miami's one of those teams you kind of got to take it for what it is.
Sure. I at least think defensively, though, they're really talented, and I think they could limit Clemson and what they could do just watching them last night. And you have to go to NC State, who is, again, they're like Duke in the sense is they're just extremely well coached, and they're going to do the fundamental things right. Like, it's – I don't know. I could see this team losing like 4 games this year. And – maybe they can go 10-2. Maybe they lose to Florida State, don't lose to anybody else the rest of the way, and get back to the ACC title game, and maybe they just improve along the way. We'll see. But I guess we need to talk about the team that actually won the game, though. Like Duke, like what a performance by Riley Leonard. I thought the game plan from offensive coordinator Kevin Johns was really good. They did what they needed to do. And again, outside the muff punt, like I really don't know what I can say about Duke's performance that was poor. Yep. Like that was just a well-coached team that knew their identity, and they continued to capitalize.
They knew they weren't about to just come aired out against Clemson's defense. Clemson's defense is formidable, but what they did in the ground game, you have 3 different guys, one of them being your quarterback, well over 40 yards, and you have 3 different guys get a rushing touchdown. And meanwhile, your quarterback averages 12 yards a carry. I mean, he was 2 yards shy of 100 yards rushing the ball.
Fantastic.
You love to see that, especially from a team like Duke. I think they're carrying on the momentum they had last year, and they hit week 1 with the ground running. I think they can carry this out. I'm not going to say they're going to go undefeated or anything of that nature, but this can be a very good team that could get 9 wins this year. I really believe that.
Yeah, I will say this: the schedule is going to get very tough.
Yeah.
Little bit. They should win. They play Lafayette. I hope I pronounced it right. Northwestern and UConn next 3 games. They should be 4-0 by the time they play Notre Dame, and then it's going to be another test. And who knows? They might get Notre Dame at the right time, coming off a lot, because Notre Dame has Ohio State the week before. Notre Dame can't be slacking off thinking about a big game against Duke. Yeah. But they have to go to Tallahassee. That's going to be a really tough game. They play. I believe they play NC State. North Carolina, of course, is a rivalry. So there's going to be certain challenges to Duke's schedule. But, hey, you're 1-0. You took down the team that's ran the conference for the past 8 to 10 years. So it's a huge win for Mike Elko, and, like, you got to tip your cap to him. But, man, from one disappointing Tiger team to the next, my national championship pick, LSU Tigers, that was the biggest game of the weekend. And it was 17. They were winning 17-14 at the half.
Yep.
But things unraveled, and it was an incredible performance by Florida State in the second half. And I'll let you take this one to start out with. You were a big believer in Florida State, and that they showed out.
I mean, I had Florida State at number 2 whenever for the playoff rankings. I think they can go undefeated this year. That was my bold prediction. They proved to me against a very talented LSU roster that they could compete with big boys, even from the SEC. They have the roster to do that. And I think this is a testament more to Mike Norvell than anybody. He has proven that while he has picked it up in high school recruiting, he's proven that if you're going to make the transfer portal what it is going to be utilized to the max. Guys like Keon Coleman is out there making plays all over the field. You still got guys like Johnny Wilson playing good, Jordan Travis and Trey Benson in that backfield. I love it. I love everything that Florida State showed me, especially against LSU. LSU is no slouch defensively. Harold Perkins, we have a couple of questions about why they're playing him the way they did, but he's still, if not the best defensive player in the country. He's still a talented dude. And they also got dudes on that D line and in that back end that I think just got exposed in that second half. It is a 4-quarter game for a reason. You have to play all 4 quarters to win. Florida State proved that they could do that against a powerhouse brand like LSU. This is the same LSU everybody's been raving about all offseason because they beat Bama, they win the SEC West, they go to the SEC championship. Guys, I think Florida State is here, and I think this is just the tip of the iceberg with them. Even after this year, I think they are set up to be very successful in the ACC for the near future.
Yeah, I will say just look, I did pick them to win the ACC. It's not like I was picking Florida State to go 8. Like I was really high on this team, especially offensively,
Yeah.
and they just cashed in the second half. Like LSU just missed their opportunities, man. My national title pick does not look good at all right now, and the concerns for them, I think, is the downfield passing attack with Jaden Daniels was not there. There were some drops, granted, that may have not been his fault. I thought they would be able to overcome the lack of a running game a little bit. I just didn't think it would be that poor because if you have a strong running game, you punch in some of those opportunities in the first half when they were at the goal line. So LSU's got a lot of things they got to figure out. And like you have Grambling State upcoming, obviously that's going to be a win. And then you have Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Ole Miss to finish out the month. If you can win those games, like the thing with LSU is all their goals are still right in front.
They're still in the same position they were at this point last year.
But I do think, you got humbled a little bit, and Florida State right now, they were the most impressive team to me of the weekend. Like,
I would go as far as say Florida State is the more talented team. We saw Jared Verse make plays on that defense. Their front seven proved a lot to me. While in the back end, they played a very physical game. They got exposed a little bit on a couple plays. They were still flying around to the football. I think they need to pick up their tackling a little bit, but they figure it out in that back end. I have no questions about this team whatsoever. They got the running game. They got the quarterback. They clearly got the receivers. They have the front seven. Florida State's for real, man. This is crazy.
And when you look at their schedule, like me and you still have concerns a little bit about their secondary, but what team's going to expose it? It's clearly not Clemson right now. Like,
maybe Notre Dame.
We'll see if Florida State doesn't play Notre Dame. Like,
that's right. Only Clemson.
So,
that's right.
Maybe Duke, maybe Miami, but those are just big.
They don't even play North Carolina, do they?
What?
They don't even play North Carolina, do they?
They don't play North Carolina or Louisville, teams that can throw the ball around. So
yeah,
they're going to have time to gel and come together, and I think they still got it now. They have to go to Death Valley and get it done. Like we're all crowning them right now. They still have to go and finish the job. And
they still got to play Miami. Jury is still out on Miami.
Yeah, we'll get to Miami in a little bit, but I'll say this: you should get a pissed off Clemson team in Death Valley. So we'll see how they respond. But yeah, it's Florida State was the most impressive team of the weekend. And all right, I have to eat crow on for. As Deion Sanders would say, I did not believe. If he should have the receipt, I would have. Man, I was so glad I was not one of the reporters in that room afterwards because I know he pointed his finger at me, and I would have
petty, and I loved it. He kept the receipts, baby. I loved it.
Let's talk about the team before we get to some of the other stuff. But I was just like mouth agape. It was incredible watching them score. And I don't think this was – now we'll get to the TCU part of this because I'll admit I don't know that TCU is very good. Yeah. Offensively, though, like Colorado has dudes. Like Travis Hunter is
Shedeur Sanders. I questioned in our preseason previews. I questioned is he going to live up to the hype? I mean, exposing people at Jackson State, that's one thing, but you're playing with the big boys now. He sat here and proved this Joker can play some efficient football. Like he is good, man.
And also a coach I've been really high on, and his stock has gone up. Sean Lewis, the offensive coordinator. He was head coach at Kent State.
Yep.
He had some really good offenses there. He gave Georgia problems last year at Kent State. Yeah. And you know how he developed talent really well because Kent State players hit the portal and
they were getting picked up.
Dante Cephas is one of the better receivers on Penn State now. You had several guys leave. His stock is going up. He'll be a head coach soon. But the offense, four receivers, they had four guys total over 100 yards. Freshman Dylan Edwards at running back was explosive.
Stud.
Offensively, I think this team just has its identity, and they're going to stick to it. And the thing now is, I guess, what's the ceiling here? Because I think we've got to readjust things now. Because I thought going into this year, I thought maybe 5 wins. I thought their schedule was just tough
Yeah.
because they play all the tough teams in the Pac-12. But now it's like, okay, their defense is about what I thought it'd be, though. It stinks. The front set, I think the secondary's fine because
Yeah.
Travis Hunter obviously was incredible in that game. I think Cormani McLean's going to come along at some point.
Yeah.
One of my concerns is I think they were going all out to win this game as well they should have. Travis Hunter cannot play 120 plus snaps every game. There's absolutely no way. You're going to get hurt at some point. You're going to get worn down. And I don't think they're going to try. Like when they play Colorado State in a couple weeks, he's not going to see that kind of workload because they're going to win that game.
They had a point to prove this week, so he played every snap.
But when it comes, you have to play Oregon and USC by the end of the month, back to back. Like, I don't know. Like that's a concern of mine. And when he's not on the field for some of those snaps, the other guys are going to get picked on. So while I still think there are questions, I think this is undoubtedly a bowl team now. Like I don't think there's any question about that. Like I had that group of Pac-12 teams at the bottom, like them, Arizona State, Stanford, Arizona, all kind of bunched together. There's no doubt in my mind they're clearly above them now. So I think the ceiling's been raised, and they're going to be must-watch TV every week, whether you like it or not.
I'm trying not to read into it too much because I still think there is some liabilities in the trenches on both offensive and defensive lines, but we knew that going into it. And they're in the right conference, and they're also moving to the right conference where that's never been an issue. You can survive in the Big 12. You can survive in the Pac-12 without very good trench work. Like we've seen UFC do it. I don't think there's any team in the Pac-12 that has a defensive line that scares me enough to affect the way Colorado is going to play offense. To put it simply, they're not playing an SEC heavy defensive line. Even the defensive line like Clemson or Ohio State, they're not going to be playing that all season. But with that being said, it is still a liability. And their defense as a whole is hit or miss, but we got to be impressed with what they're doing offensively, because if we can sit here and hype up Caleb Williams and UFC strictly because of how many points they can put up, we might have to do the same thing with Colorado. I've said this before. I've had so many people think Colorado is just going to be the next big thing. So many people think, Colorado is overrated. Guys, you do not get that many transfer players. You don't get that many transfer players just to be bad at football. That doesn't happen. It doesn't matter if you're not as good at offensive line or defensive line spots. It doesn't matter if you're not as good on defense. You don't get that many players just to only win 3 games. That doesn't happen. Deion knows football. He has the playmakers. I definitely think he's going bowling. I thought it was a possibility well before they played that game. Now it's a definite for me. I think they are here, and I think they have the offense to really compete with just about anybody in the Pac-12. Nobody in the Pac-12 scares me defensively other than Utah to really make shake against Colorado. I think that they can win a substantial amount of games with the way they play.
I think Oregon State would be a big problem for them because Oregon State can play keep away, and their offensive line is very good. They'll push that. That to me would be a bad matchup, and I think I think Oregon State's pretty solid defensively. But what's going to be the over under for that game against USC on September 30th? It's going to be 105.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I honestly think both teams can put up 50. I really do.
It's going to be must-watch TV every week, and you'll see them big noon kickoff again against Nebraska. So those were the big 3 storylines. I guess we're going to jump conference by conference now, starting with I think the conference that was pretty impressive over the weekend. You had the Florida State beating LSU, and Clemson aside, I mean, it was still an ACC result. Duke won. So I think let's talk. I want to talk about North Carolina first, and, we'll be going through these a little bit quicker, but I think the defensive performance was much needed. But I still say there are questions. I
think it was a little bit more of South Carolina just doesn't have much.
We talked about this a little bit on our playoff preview. Like I started to walk back a little bit on South Carolina because their offensive line and their running game, it's bad. I'll say this.
Even though Spencer Rattler, he did what he
played well.
That brother played his heart out.
Defensively, I think they've lost too many difference makers through the portal this year. I think this could be a really rough go for South Carolina. It's not going to get any easier either because, man, if you think blocking North Carolina's tough, buddy, you got to go to Athens to play Georgia in a
But
couple
let
weeks.
me let me say let me say this. After week 1 when they struggled against Georgia State last year, we were saying the exact same things about South Carolina. They love to do this where first 6 games of the season, you're even questioning if South Carolina has a football team. And then some reason on the back stretch, they can upset a Georgia, they can upset a Tennessee, they can upset a Clemson. So South Carolina is one of those teams I got to pump the brakes with because in the past it's come back to bite me.
Yeah, I'll just say when it's that bad up front, it's going to be hard to win games. And
Mhm.
the thing is, they're that way because of injury. Like I don't think this is they're going to get better situation. Like
Yeah.
they've got a lot of things to figure out in Columbia. But just hopping over to the North Carolina side, the defense was obviously impressive. I think they had 9 sacks. They looked really good and did what they were supposed to. And then Drake May, without his top 2 options at receiver, I mean, he looked like the top 5 pick, like one of the best quarterbacks in the country, like we expect him to be. I thought their offensive line played pretty well, and I thought they ran the ball well. Like it was just an all around really good game for North Carolina. And now everybody's loving on you now, and now you got to play App State again. Like just
Yeah.
go out there, show the focus, because you still got Minnesota and Pitt before you finish. Like it's still a tough month ahead.
Yep.
But like I think North Carolina was pretty big, but I'll let you take it from you for your ACC.
Yeah, just looking through the ACC games, I saw a lot that I liked. We can go ahead and dig into it right now if you want to. What happened with the Yellow Jackets, baby? What happened?
I've been talking about this like it was a heartbreaking defeat. It was like there was a lot to really be excited about, especially in the first half. I
Yep,
think there are definitely some things to build off of. Like, that first quarter, there was a couple of, very first drive of the game. Haynes King has a pass tipped up and intercepted. And I'm
yep,
sure a lot of Tech fans were like, oh, no, here we go. Then in the second half, like they turned into a high scoring team. Like they scored 4 straight drives and hit explosive plays. Like Chase Lane, 48-yard touchdown. Jamal Haynes had a big play. Malik Rutherford had a 55-yard catch. Trey Cooley had 2 touchdown runs. Like they looked really good. And then I think their inability to run the ball and put Louisville away in the
yep,
second half, they did miss a short field goal. I think the biggest thing was they have to find ways to get pressure on the quarterback. When you're playing an offense coached by Jeff Brom, they're going to be really good at what they do. You have to knock the quarterback off his spot and get pressure. And that goes for anything, but like that offense can be high powered if you let it. And they really got clicking in the second half. I thought Jeff Brom made the adjustments and coached a great second half. I think that was one of the biggest things of the games. I do think he outcoached Brent Key a little bit in the second half. So. Um, I do feel better about Georgia Tech after this game, though,
yeah.
because
I agree.
I,
There was a
I
lot
don't
of
think
good things.
Louisville is a great team. They're good. Like, they're a top 30 team to me, like
Yeah,
30, 35 team to me. They have to figure out. Tackling was an issue as well, but pass rush, tackling,
yeah.
finishing drives in the second half, like you have to do all those things, and then I think they're fine. They'll beat South Carolina State this weekend, and then you'll have another test when you go to Oxford to play Ole Miss. But
I think the biggest thing for me watching Georgia Tech, I think you found your guy. I really think Haynes King is the quarterback that can take this team to the next level. You have to build around him. Defensively, I have a lot of questions. Um, Strictly because of how well Louisville was able to run the ball. Like they had a bunch of guys be able to tote the rock against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is going to have to really step up their game because it doesn't get easier from here. You're going to have teams wanting to run the ball down your throat all game long because I do think Georgia Tech showed the potential. They can make big plays offensively. So now, whenever you start to create that persona as a team, you got a guy like Haynes King. I mean, Haynes King rushed for what, 50 yards, had over 300 passing with 3 tutties. I mean, you got a guy that can really knock you off your feet offensively. Teams are going to want to run the football, control the clock, and Georgia Tech is going to have to stand up and capitalize on that. I think there was a lot more good things to take away from that game than there were bad for Georgia Tech. But defensively, that is the biggest question. They're going to have to be able to get stops.
and like obviously like it counts, but like after Haynes King had a fumble, a strip sack in the fourth quarter, and then the very next play, 75-yard touchdown run because of a missed tackle. Like that's where a lot of those chunk yards came from. Is just the tackling in space was really poor, and Brent Key owned it. Like I said, we got to work on that, and like the biggest improvements are generally made week 1 to week 2. So we'll definitely see what they have the rest of the way. But I do think there are some things to be encouraged by, and like sometimes that may sound like loser talk, but
Yeah.
after these past 4 seasons, like I do think that was the best half of football I've seen that team
Yes, I
in
would
a
agree.
long
Yeah.
time. So the other team, I do want to talk about Miami for just a second
Yeah,
because I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that game. I'll say this: going back to last year, Bethune Cookman doesn't count, but like Middle Tennessee State and Southern Miss, obviously Miami lost one of those games, and against Southern Miss, they were like up 10-7 at the half and did not look good. They came out and handled their business, and I just think going from year to year with Mario Cristobal, they at least come out and did what they were supposed to. Their defense looked very, very good. Like their front seven, I'm kind of buying them a little bit defensively. The passing attack, I've still got some things to see, but we'll see. Well, this weekend's going to be a big tell for both Miami and Texas A&M. But I at least wanted to highlight them as somebody that did look good, but it was against an overmatched opponent.
I mean, yeah, you kept them under what? I don't even think they got barely 50 yards rushing.
No,
Yeah, so Miami's defense, they played great offensively. I like the little two-headed monster they're creating at the running back position. I mean, you had two guys over 75 yards with a touchdown each. Tyler Van Dyke, I'm waiting on him. Like I've heard so much about him even before last year. I've heard so much about him. I'm waiting to see what the hype is about. Granted, he went 17 for 22, 200 yards. He had a touchdown. He didn't play bad, but I'm waiting on him to air it out like a lot of Miami fans thought he would.
so I'll say this, and we won't spend a ton of time on this game, but watching it, it did seem like Miami was just kind of all right. Let's
Yeah,
throw
they didn't
throw
open
some
up the way.
screens, throw
Yeah.
some little hitches. Let's get out of here. And plus, you almost found out how good, like you almost got the Tyler Van Dyke experience over the spring and the summer from the way it sounded. But
Yeah.
we'll move on from that. But anything else you want to hit on the ACC? I think we're not going to have to talk about this game for more than 30 seconds. What the heck, Boston College? What are we doing here? Like, man, there's not many coaches I can definitively say are on the hot seat, but Jeff Hafley, that's
Oh my
turn
God.
up, man.
That was rough. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the stats now. I mean, not even 50% of your passes completed. Run game was not very good. Your
It's year
quarterback.
4, and they're losing to Northern Illinois at home. So
Yeah, like they didn't have a receiver catch over 40 yards in the game. That's bothersome.
yeah, not good. All right, let's go to the Big Ten, and let's start. I think we need to start with Ohio State.
Ooh, that's the biggest question.
Yeah, and me and you talked about this, and we were both like, I'm not going to sit here and say the sky is falling or anything. Like, it's still Ohio State,
no,
but
it's not time to panic,
I
but it
think
is time
what
for
me and you were kind of hinting at, because we were wondering, all right, do they just have two really good quarterbacks that are in a good competition, or can Ryan Day not choose between two quarterbacks that might be kind of mid by Ohio State standards? And Kyle McCord, like, he wasn't awful. He was nowhere near the level you expect of an Ohio State quarterback, especially coming off C.J. Stroud.
But also, we knew that. We knew he wasn't Justin Fields. We knew he wasn't C.J. Stroud. Like there was a reason it took this long for them to find out who their guy was.
But me and you had concerns about the offensive line. I still have concerns about the offensive line. It was not great. They couldn't run the ball except in some spurts. Emeka Ibuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. were kind of non-existent. I think the bright spot for them is they had to rely on their defense, and the defense delivered. Like they played very well. Like I think all Indiana's probably trash offensively. Just to be honest with you,
That too.
It kind of follows a pattern of last year when they didn't have to, like against Georgia, Michigan, and Penn State. They gave up points against everybody else. Like they killed them defensively. Now you're just going to have to see what you do against the team.
Now I don't think they have the offense to keep them in a game like if they were playing Georgia like they did in the playoffs. Because if we being honest right now, Penn State's on the rise, baby. Like Penn State looks like they could go in there and really win. Like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but they got a couple. They got Youngstown State this weekend in West Kentucky, and then the big test is going to be when they hit the road to play Notre Dame. Like that's when we're really going to find out. Maybe for both teams, but definitely for Ohio State. More questions than answers. Do you got anything else on this game?
No, I'm trying to give them a little bit of grace because we knew that Kyle McCord was not going to come out and be the next CJ Stroud or Justin Fields or JT Barrett. We knew that. But they're going to have to pick it up because right now the Big Ten, Michigan and Penn State look good, man. I was very impressed this past weekend.
You want to talk about Penn State? I want to talk about
We
Penn State.
got to talk about Penn State. We can't go a show without talking about Penn
It
State.
wasn't the most perfect game, but the thing is, I saw what I needed to see from
Yep.
Drew Lar. Like he was on the run, he was making throws.
Yep.
I mean, I still think they're going to have to get some reliable production at receiver and have more guys step up. The tight ends weren't really involved, and
Yep.
I think Singleton and that backfield they had a decent game, but they didn't have a run longer than 15 yards. It wasn't the bruising attack I saw. And
I mean, they still averaged. Everybody averaged over 5 yards a carry. I mean,
the thing is, like, this game was never in doubt. Like, you never once thought, well, maybe they're going to get upset or maybe this, maybe that. Like, their defense just suffocated West Virginia. And West Virginia's got quarterback problems.
yeah.
But West Virginia has a very good offensive line and running game. I think the only team I think better that's going to be better than them in that aspect is going to be Michigan. Like, I don't think Penn State's going to play a running attack or offensive line as good as West Virginia's. Yeah. But I saw what I needed to see. Like, obviously, they have to do it against Ohio State, Michigan later on in the season. But
the talent is there, and we've seen
it. I still think that the sky's the limit here for this team.
But like you said, there's not just a stud wide receiver out there, but when you have a quarterback like this, Drew Allar is that guy. When you have a quarterback like this, I mean, clearly he went 21 for 29, 325 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaged 15 yards an attempt. When you have a wide receiver room by committee and you just have a quarterback that can put the ball where it needs to be, you don't need a Marvin Harrison. You don't need a Jameson Williams. You don't need somebody like that. You have a guy that's going to put the ball where it needs to be. All you got to do is just throw somebody out there to catch it. And they can do that with the running game they have, because I did see enough from their running back room. Even without Nick Singleton, I think they have a running back room where they could rely on if they need to get short yards, if they need to run out the clock. I think they have everything they need offensively to really make some shake and make the playoffs this year.
Yep. You got anything on Michigan? I don't. Like, they did what they needed to do. Jim Harbaugh wasn't there. Their offensive coordinator wasn't there. They just kind of, all right, let's get up, let's coast.
I mean, I was impressed. The talent they were playing wasn't much to be spoken about, but we did see J.J. McCarthy go out there and put it on an efficient show. I mean, he almost had as many touchdowns as he had incompletions. He only had 4 incompletions. So you love to see that, especially early on. I want to see him be more efficient. I want him to be able to make consistent big plays through the air. That was the biggest issue last year. I mean, they didn't make a lot of big plays through the air, but when they did, they go out and beat in Ohio State doing it. So if he can get efficient and if he can still make big plays through the air, they're going to be good. Blake Corum, he's Blake Corum. He's the best running back in the country. I mean, he's just that good. Wide receivers, I think they had a good outing. Buddy, I can't remember. Wilson, he had 3 touchdowns. I mean, I think they're good. Defensively, they played the way they needed to play against a team like East Carolina. Right now, it looks like it's going to be a collision course for Michigan and Penn State.
Yeah. Like, I can't stuff starting this week. They got UNLV coming to town, so I hope the Wolverines are ready for their schedule to start getting tough.
Can I throw a game in there we need to talk about just because I need to get this out the way?
Sure.
Buddy, what's going on in Nebraska? What is going on?
That was some beautiful Big Ten football, by the way. I don't know how much of that game you caught. I don't know if you're watching Utah.
I caught the last half of the game, dude, and I was like, what am I watching right now?
Dude, I'll say this. 1, I do think Minnesota's defense is pretty good. 2, it's kind of like Jeff Sims is talented.
Yes.
I don't get why some people were putting him on a pedestal during the offseason, and I don't quite understand it because
he went out there and put out a same performance. He went out there and put out a same performance I've seen him do a dozen times at Georgia Tech.
He's like, he is very athletic. He can run the ball, and he ran the ball well in this game, but there's down receivers a ton and forces balls and turns the ball over. Like, every Georgia Tech fan on the planet is going to tell you that, and it was just the same. I saw some people, like some Nebraska fans, calling for his benching. Like, that's going to happen because he just brings too much in the running game. Like, there's – and also I'll say this: I was never big on hiring Marcus Satterfield as an offense coordinator. Like, I didn't think – I thought he held Rattler back at South Carolina. I thought they improved by getting rid of him, but it's going to be the struggle bus for Nebraska hitting a bowl game, and they got a team coming to town. They got to go to Boulder this weekend to play Colorado. So
I don't think that's going to be pretty. I think Colorado blows them out. I really do.
they may like it's not great, but Illinois. Just a couple of quick hitters here. They had to hang on against Toledo, who is projected to win the MAC and is a solid Group of 5 team. But Illinois had to hang on to win there. The passing attack for Wisconsin. Did you see any of that?
No, I didn't catch the Wisconsin game. How'd that go?
They ran the ball well. The passing attack concerns me, and it's kind of what I was saying in the preseason. Obviously, they'll have it. I think they're in trouble Saturday. I think going to Washington State is going to be a challenge for them because they look good this weekend as well. So.
Now, is it? I'm just looking at the box score. So you watched the game. You saw the eye test. Is it because they don't have a quarterback? Because I mean, he passed for 24 for 31. I mean, he wasn't just
They weren't
bad throws, or is it because they don't have receiving talent like that?
I think it's I've never been high on Tanner Mordecai, even when he was at SMU. But I also do think at Wisconsin they got some guys in the portal, but you just don't when you change philosophies like they have overnight and try to attack a little bit more downfield. It's hard to do that. Hard to change that much overnight, and some of it's going to be recruiting, and some of it's going to be getting better players through the portal.
You say change philosophies while they casually just have 2 running backs rush for
and that's the thing. Like
4 touchdowns.
The thing is, when Phil Longo was at North Carolina, when he had Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, they both had 1,000 yards. So I knew they were going to run the ball some. I think they're just going to have to rely on that still.
That's all they got.
I don't think they're a bad team. I just think the passing attack still concerns me a lot.
Yeah.
Iowa scored 24 points.
Who would have thought? Freaking Iowa.
They fell one short of the 25-point per game goal for Brian Ferentz. So they got some ground to make up.
It looks like Cade McNamara didn't have the most efficient game. I mean,
it was Iowa. Like I'm not even gonna say I'm concerned.
Iowa fashion.
I've seen that game from them a million times. Like they got up early and then they coasted.
Yeah.
Anything else in the Big Ten?
No, nothing much. I mean, Nebraska really let me down. I think that was almost the biggest takeaway. Ohio State, they got to pick it up. Maryland went out and handled business. I mean, Talia had 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yeah, good for them. Rutgers beating Northwestern. I mean, I couldn't have told you before the game who was going to win that one, but I mean, Rutgers won pretty convincingly. It looked like
that was awesome to watch Sunday.
It's like 2 JV football teams going at it.
Let's go to the Big 12, where it was not a good week at all.
Yeah,
and let's start in the state of Texas, and not with Texas. We'd already talked about TCU a little bit. Very disappointing start to the season for Sonny Dykes there. They got a lot of things to figure out. I want to focus on 2 other teams, and it was
go ahead and do it.
I was high on, and one of them I'm going to play the "I told you so" game. Let's start with Baylor.
Whew.
WTF?
Are we just going to
Auburn legend TJ Finley?
TJ freaking Finley did that to Baylor. A Dave Aranda built Baylor team, and TJ Finley does that.
I was sitting there watching that game, and yes, I tuned into this game once I saw what was going on. They couldn't stop them. Like this wasn't like one of those fluky upsets where Baylor had 8 turnovers and Texas State got good field position. Texas State just flat out was better than Baylor.
Yeah.
I try not to overreact to week 1 games, but Dave Aranda's seat may be just like the heat may have got turned up on him. And it's weird because he just won a Big 12 title 2 years ago and was a fluky loss short of going to the playoff.
Yep.
The 6, they were disappointed.
It's not like Baylor didn't do much offensively. I mean, Blake Shapen, he had a good outing. He didn't turn the ball over. He had 2 touchdowns.
He's hurt.
He's hurt?
He's out 3 weeks.
Oh, God, I didn't even know that. Jesus.
And Utah is coming to town.
That's going to be embarrassing. Oh, God. Yeah, that defense, Baylor's defense just isn't it, dude.
Yeah, that game went from intriguing to I'll check the box score on later, and it'll be Utah's going to win like 28-3. Yeah. They'll have like 250 yards rushing, and they'll hold Baylor to like under 200 yards. That's how this game's going to go. Yeah. Let's go to Texas Tech. They made the dangerous trip to Laramie, Wyoming, and they did not come back without a loss. That was a very, very fun game to watch, especially at the end, double overtime. Wyoming hitting that 4th down pass to convert, and then getting the 2-point conversion to win. huge win for Craig Bowl. That is one of the hardest jobs to win out, and he seems to get something out of them consistently. I think they're going to be contenders in the Mountain West, but everybody's preseason darling in the Big 12. This is the one thing I can go. I was wrong about a lot this weekend. This is something I can gloat about. I told y'all about Texas Tech, and they're not a bad team. They were not as much as a lot of people.
They couldn't stop a cold in the winter, dude.
And you know what? A team that just scored 81 points is coming to town next weekend. So have fun with that. And I think they're a 6-6, 7-5 team at best. They struggled to score. I think the offense was fine, but I don't think it was like unstoppable either. So you got anything else on this game? Or I know you weren't like
funny story for everybody that's listening to this right now. I just get a random text talking about, are you watching what Wyoming's doing? And sure enough, it's Jackson, because Jackson's got eyes everywhere. He's watching every game at all times if he is not in the bins watching Georgia Tech. That's just how it is. I get that text and I check the score. Sure enough, it says Wyoming wins in double overtime against Texas Tech. I did not want to believe what I was seeing. I really didn't. I go back and look at the highlights and watch film. I'm like, Wyoming just won a game against Texas Tech. That is crazy in itself.
That's my version of the "you up" text. Like, hey, you watching Wyoming at 1 a.m. right now?
Hey, you up? You watching this game?
Yeah. Exactly. Let's transition. Oklahoma. It was Arkansas State, but they scored, I think, on nearly every drive. And Jackson Arnold come in 11 for 11, threw a couple touchdowns,
and the defense didn't give a point. Like that's a Brent Venables defense. I mean, granted, Arkansas State is just
that's
not, but that's good momentum you want to see in week one. Yeah,
because how bad they were defensively, you didn't want to come out and play.
You didn't want to do what Texas did,
give up 24 points.
Yeah,
and I think this defense is going to be tested this weekend with SMU. So I'm not saying they're going to lose the game, but you're going to get tested more than you did last week. But very impressive. I'm also I've ESPN's FPI. I don't know if you follow that. Their Football Power Index has Oklahoma 4th.
I can't do that.
Yeah,
no, not a chance.
Let's pump the brakes on that a little bit. But they were impressive. Like they definitely were. Texas, you got any thoughts there? To me, it come off as like, all right, let's get out of here with a win. We got Alabama on deck.
Yeah, and I'm going to chalk it up as that's what it is. I mean, clearly you don't have a Bijan Robinson anymore in that offense. It is, like, clear. But Xavier Worthy came out and he handled his business. We saw a little bit of A.D. Mitchell with a touchdown. Isaiah Nayer had one catch. I still think Jonte Cook, we saw him a pretty good bit. I think he had a couple catches. I still think this is a very dangerous team, and I do think they were just looking a week ahead at Alabama. They were just trying to survive this week. Not to say that it was a close game or anything. I never had any doubt that Texas wasn't going to win, but I think that we're going to see a very different and a very well-prepared Texas team come to Tuscaloosa.
Yep. Biggest game of the weekend. Game day is going to be there. It's going to be huge. Like, that's going to be a huge game. Any other Big 12 thoughts? Jalen Daniels didn't play. Kansas won anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, our Oklahoma State, they got their win. BYU, does BYU concern you? They only scored 14 points against Sam Houston.
Yeah, have you seen that box score? You need to check out the total yardage for both that game for BYU and Sam Houston State like that. Yeah, that was – I kept checking in on that game a little bit. Yeah, that was – I don't know what to do with BYU right now. They didn't look very good.
That's kind of concerning.
UCF, it was against, I think, Kent State, but UCF looked pretty efficient on offense. I'll say
Houston and UTSA looked like a good game.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. I think Houston was a little lucky to get out of there with a win, to be honest. But, hey, me and you were both high on UTSA. I picked UTSA to win, and Holgorsen got the win. So, not a great week for the Big 12, but it could be even better. If Texas beats Alabama, it erases all that. So,
pretty much.
Do you know there was a conference this week that didn't lose a game?
And it is a conference that's not looking like a conference anymore. That makes it so much worse.
Let's go to the Pac-12, and you can just I'll let you take this where you want to at first. There was a lot of impressive performance. We've already hit on Colorado, but there was obviously some other teams that looked very good this weekend.
I mean, it was another Caleb Williams show-stopping performance. I mean, the kid is electric. He has it. We saw him extending plays, juking people out from behind the line of scrimmage just to throw a dime 30 yards downfield. Caleb Williams is that guy, but I ain't gonna lie to you, that defense really does concern me.
I'll say this: I watched that entire game.
Yeah.
I have Pac-12 Network. I'm one of like the 5 people on
You're
it.
one of the 6 people that has it.
I have Pac-12 Network, and the defense, it gave up a drive that
They
very.
gave up almost 200 rushing yards. I mean,
A lot of that was in the second half. I'll say that. Like a lot of it was garbage time. Like you know me, I do not come to this defense's defense.
Yeah.
At any point in time. I will say for most of the time they played pretty well. But the thing is, like, I think Nevada's probably one of the 5 worst teams in the country. Like, I would pick Hawaii to beat Nevada if they played tomorrow. So
that's bold.
Did you see the line for the
Stanford game,
by the way?
You said what?
Did you see the line for the Stanford game this week? USC Stanford? 30. When was the last time you could say that? USC Stanford game.
I mean, I believe it. Stanford just gave up 24 points to Hawaii. Imagine what Caleb Williams is going to do.
And the weird thing was that was a kind of an impressive performance by Stanford because they were only 2-point favorites in that game. Like,
wow, I didn't know it was that close. Wow,
people massively. Let me go on one of my weird rants here. Okay, Stanford opens the season as 10-point favorites on the road to Hawaii. Hawaii doesn't win the game, but plays Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, the SEC powerhouse, tough. All of a sudden, we have an 8-point shift in the line.
Yeah,
like, let's stop overreacting. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, Stanford got the win. I don't know if they're going to get another one this season, but I just thought that was a curious one. But let's talk about Washington. They played a team that was picked in the preseason to beat Boise State.
That was a clinic, to say the
Michael
least.
Penix Jr., nearly 500 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. Their receiver room is stupid. Like, it is. There's 3 NFL receivers on that team.
Yes.
Dunze, McMillan, and Polk, those are all NFL players.
Yep.
I thought they were right now. To me, I think I would pick them to win the Pac-12. I had to make in the title game. I would give them the edge over USC because
an 80-point showing by Oregon doesn't sway your belief a little bit.
Yeah, who'd they play?
That's fair.
It's impressive. I just like Portland State. Like I don't.
Yeah,
They were, to me, there was another team. My Beavers, man. Like we'll just jump to them right quick. I don't have any more on Washington. Their offense is just dumb. Like,
listen, do we owe DJ an apology?
We might. Like,
I think we do. I mean, granted, I was never one to just criticize the kid, but he was very underwhelming at Clemson.
To be fair, he needs to do it against good teams.
Yes.
But like you saw what you want to see. He was efficient. Yeah. He ran the ball well at the goal line.
Like, not only that Oregon State offensive line, they showed me something. I mean, they protected.
No doubts about their offensive line and run game. I picked Damian Martinez as one of my 10 best backs in the country. He's fantastic. I think he's going to be first team all Pac-12 this year. Yep. Defense was good. It was just an all-around good performance. And while a lot of these Pac-12 teams are going to be high-flying like USC, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, that's not – Oregon State can score. It's just in a different way. Like, they play bully ball. Like, they're going to – that offensive line and their defense is going to give you problems. And if you add a dangerous passing attack, because we said this, we did pick the under on their win total because it got a little high, but we said if their quarterback play improves significantly, they won 10 games last year with bad quarterback play. If you even get good quarterback play now, I don't think them making the Pac-12 title games out of the question.
I'm telling you this now. I think my most interesting game in the Pac-12 this year will be Utah and Oregon State. I think that is going to be a very interesting game.
You know what that is? That's the Spider-Man meme pointing into each other like that. That's
literally. Well, I don't know. I think who's to say DJ isn't the better quarterback going into that game?
Yeah. The conference quarterbacks, like it's.
Who would have thought?
You know, it was a great week all around. Even some of the teams at the bottom, like Arizona, got a win.
Arizona State.
I'll say Arizona State was probably the win. I'll say was kind of.
It was kind of sketch, but you saw Jalen Rashada. You see him buying in a little bit, and he goes out and wins you that game against a subpar opponent, but they still routed off a win.
Well, I guess we got one more conference to go.
Yeah,
conference I don't think was very good overall this weekend. SEC, I guess we've talked about LSU. Let's just talk Georgia Bama right here.
Yeah,
I'll let you go with Alabama because I did watch most of the game. It was
yeah.
very impressive. I thought Jalen Milroe. It was the game you wanted to see. Defense looked nasty. That's my
Defense, that was the biggest takeaway from this game. Defense looked nasty. Granted, they're playing Middle Tennessee. I mean, the same Middle Tennessee that kind of exposed Miami last year, but it is
same
Middle Tennessee.
defensive coordinator too.
Yeah, it's Middle Tennessee, but you saw what you wanted to see defensively from Bama, flying around, joyless murder ball, all of that. You saw it. You saw that even without Will Anderson, you still got guys like Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell to be worried about. Caleb Downs led the team in tackles. I mean, he's going to be everything we expect of him. And then you saw some of the transfer guys like I can't remember his first name. Key, the transfer from UAB. Yeah, we saw him come in and get a pick. You got to see that. Kool-Aid, nobody's going to try him in the country. But offensively, I like it. And maybe it was just we weren't opening up the playbook, but I like it. Run, run, run. Jalen Milroe makes a play, throwing a 50-yard dime downfield. I love to see that. If you're Alabama, the key to this season is making the teams fear the run so much that is going to have a Jermaine Burton or an Isaiah Bond wide open 50 yards downfield. If he keeps this philosophy up, I think Tommy Reese is going to do wonders this year for the Tide. Jalen Milroe came out, was efficient. We saw what he could do with his legs if on a busted play. We saw him air it out through the passing game. You saw exactly what you needed to see. I think the only thing offensively I wish I could have seen a little bit more was a little bit more of the running backs put in work. But granted, it is Middle Tennessee. They're not going to open up the playbook and just scheme up Middle Tennessee with their run game. I think they will be challenged, and I am a little nervous about Texas because that is going to be our first true test. But I think this Bama team, they showed me a lot.
Yeah, if Bama can get a downfield passing attack consistently, they're going to be they can win the national title. That was my worry during the season, and they have to do it against teams I think are good, and Texas is one of those teams, and
Yeah.
we'll definitely see. But it was a perfect week for Alabama, to be honest.
They dominated the way they used to against lackluster teams, and you love to see that.
Did you watch any Georgia?
What I did watch in that first half, it wasn't the prettiest game.
It wasn't. The thing is, I'm trying to did Georgia care? I don't know that they care right now. That to me, they'll wake up when they play South Carolina because it's an SEC game. It's in Athens. It's going to be a big game. But right now, I think Georgia, to me, and this could be dangerous down the line because it could get them got at some point. They were on cruise control.
Yeah. And I think we talked about that. That was their biggest flaw in our SEC preview was, are they going to be able to handle the hype? Because right now you're on the top of the pedestal in the college football world. You had a little bit of an issue last year playing down to the level of your competition. You can't do that and think every game is going to be a cakewalk this year because you're going to get everybody's test. Once South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, they're all going to be coming at you with all they got. And you might mess up and slip up and lose one of those. So imagine you lose to a Tennessee and then you lose in the SEC championship, hypothetically. That could really put a wrench in Georgia's season whenever a lot of people think, myself included, they have every opportunity to get the three-peat.
Yep. I thought they looked disinterested. They dominated. They just looked there was some sloppiness.
The second half was a lot better than the first half. A lot.
First half, because it was 7-0 for a while, and you're just wondering, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Tennessee looked pretty good. I think they were playing a terrible Virginia team, but
terrible.
That's the worst team in the ACC.
You did see the guy that got at quarterback with a rocket launcher attached to his arm, though, right?
Yeah, he had some plays. He also had some misses. To me, it was.
He also did have some drops. There was a couple drops that were just they don't have a Jalen Hyatt out there anymore.
It'll be one of those as the season progresses against better teams. I'm not even going to say Florida is a good team, but they're better than Virginia, and I think that game is in the swamp in a couple of weeks. So it's just one of those. Let's see what.
I was very impressed with Tennessee's run game. That kind of impressed me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Kentucky started slow; they were fine. Vanderbilt started slow. SEC West, Ole Miss and Auburn, lesser
Lane Kiffin numbers. I mean,
yeah. SEC wise, I don't. Just the thing was, is you had one of your playoff and national title contenders go down. Like that was
Back
that
it up, back it up. I didn't have them as a national
you
title.
did. A lot of people did, including me. So my opinion's not worth much, but I at least had it out there. So
Did you take anything away from Texas A&M?
they looked impressive.
I
It's
mean,
just,
Connor
as we said
Wigman.
a
I
million
mean,
times on the show already. It's just I don't know if it's. We'll find out this
yeah.
weekend when they play Miami.
I mean, Evan Stewart's still that guy. I think Connor
Like
Wigman can.
we knew that though. Like
Yeah,
bad offense or not, like we Connor Wegman had a very good game, very efficient game.
yeah.
You get that out of him week to week, they could be a threat.
And then all respect, I have to say this just to round out the SEC talk. Love the tribute they did for God rest his soul, Mike Leach,
Yep.
Mississippi State. I love the tribute they did. I really hope they have success this season in his honor. Like, especially with Will Rogers being there for so long, I really hope Mississippi State finds a way to have some success this season.
Well, I guess let's start wrapping the show up, but we do want to release the only thing you need to be following for the year: the goal line stand top 25. And this isn't like the AP top 25 where we just, all right, you win, you get to move up, you lose, you get to move down. It's just kind of like based on a neutral site type thing. So
Yep.
I guess we'll just, kind of go team by what our top teams are, and then we'll just kind of relay that back and forth. But I feel like we're going to be in unison on number one still.
Yeah, very much so.
Georgia.
Kansas. Oh, okay. Never mind, my fault.
At first, I was like, okay, Duke, but
Yes, it is the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, they beat the brakes off a team they should have. I still have a lot of questions, but honestly, there's no team on their schedule that's going to answer any of those questions for me.
No. So, okay. I know me and you had a little bit of disagreement about number two.
Yes.
So I had Penn State. I'm very high on Penn State. Your number two?
My number two, I am going to put Alabama at number two. I mean, granted, they played Middle Tennessee. We still got to see what they can do against a team like Texas. But if their defense is playing how I think they will play, that offensive line looked good. The running game looked good. Jalen Milroe, he looked very efficient throwing the ball. They have more talent than everybody else. If they figure it out and get it clicking, I don't see anybody beating them.
I'll just go through the rest of my top 10 and then just let you go. I had Florida State 3, Alabama 4, Michigan 5, Washington 6, Ohio State 7, USC 8, Notre Dame 9, and Texas 10th. I think my most it felt weird putting Ohio State 7th, but it was just after that offensive performance, I at least have to put a question mark above them. It's like, man, I don't know that I would trust them on a neutral field to beat Washington or Michigan right now. I just don't. I thought Washington showed enough defensively against a solid. I mean, Boise State was picked to win the Mountain West. Like that, to me, that's worth a little something. That's what got them the edge over USC. But even USC, I could envision USC beating Ohio State just by outscoring them. And I don't trust USC defense, but
yep. At my number three, I still have Michigan. Don't get me wrong, I'm very high on Florida State, but Michigan, I think if they played on a neutral field today, I would give the edge to Michigan. Because I think Michigan plays a little bit better on the back end defensively. I think they both have good quarterbacks. They got playmakers on offense, but I think Michigan might be able to pull that out. But right there at number 4, I do have Florida State. At number 5, I have Ohio State. Number 6, I got Penn State. Don't be mad at me, but I want to see Penn State really go out there and beat the brakes off somebody that has some weight behind their name. Once Penn State starts doing that, I have full expectations that they will. There is no reason that Penn State won't be in the top 3, if not the top 2, maybe by the middle of the season.
Yep.
And then at number 7, I do have USC. At number 8, I have Tennessee. Number 9, I have Texas. And number 10, I got Oregon.
So I had Oregon at number 11. Is there a reason? I guess Tennessee was a little higher than I had. I had them at 12th, and then you didn't have Notre Dame in your top 10. Is it just who they played so far?
It's just who they played, and don't get me wrong, I think Sam Hartman is a very good quarterback, but Notre Dame has a very hard schedule, and I can't sit here and tell you that they beat all the big name teams on their schedule on a neutral field. I can't just go and say that.
Yeah, I think I've liked the way they've looked so far. They've looked really
on a neutral field. I can't say Notre Dame beats Tennessee. I just can't say that.
I think so right now. I would pick them slightly. Anybody over the top 8 teams, but
yeah.
So just rounding up my top 15, 13, 14, and 15 had Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Utah.
Yeah.
I'm not totally drinking the Kool-Aid on Oklahoma because I still have some doubts, but I do think offensively they look pretty electric. And if they turn around their close game woes from a year ago, because that was one of the main reasons they lost 6 games, they were all close outside of the Texas game. So
Yep.
Kansas State looked good this weekend. Again, didn't really play anybody, but I'm still high on that team. And Utah is just they're Utah like that.
Yep.
I trust them against most teams in the country still.
Yeah. At my number 11, I did have Notre Dame. At number 12, I got Oklahoma. At number 13, I have Utah. At number 14, I got Oregon State. Gotta love your Beavers. And at 15, I would put this was kind of a toss up. I got them back to back. I got 15, I got A&M, and then 16, I would put LSU right there.
Okay. So I'll go 16 through 20. North Carolina 16, LSU 17. They took a big drop to me. Like they got a lot to answer for. Ole Miss at 18, Oregon State 19, and Iowa 20. You got any big disagreements there? Or?
And not so much. And I see your reasoning for putting them there. At number 16, I did have LSU. 17, I had Washington. 18, I put Clemson. 19, I put North Carolina. 20, I did put UCF.
Interesting. Why so low in Washington? I think they would score on anybody.
Score, yes. Defense. That's it. Defense. Granted, defense isn't bad. It's not like a North Carolina level defense, but can you trust Washington's defense to go out there against a Florida State or against even an Oregon State right now, or even a Utah? Can you trust that their defense is going to hold the line?
No, but I think they could keep up with Florida State. I think I'd pick Florida State to win, but I think Washington could keep.
I think Florida State's defense may or may not solve problems, not through the secondary, but I think that their front seven could cause problems for Washington. At least,
what now?
I think like Florida State's front seven could be disruptive for Washington.
Yeah, for sure. Finishing out my top 25, A&M 21, Tulane 22. I actually had Auburn at 23. I was kind of impressed with them over the weekend. Wisconsin 24, UCLA 25. We didn't really that was one Pac-12 team I meant to talk about. Ethan Garber's got to start. Looked a little shaky. Dante Moore come in and pretty good. So I think UCLA, is only going to get better. Me and you were both pretty high on them at the season. I couldn't put them much higher, though, because there's got to be a little more proof in the pudding with Dante Moore, but they rounded out my poll.
At 21, I got Ole Miss. At 22, I got Mississippi State. At 23, I have UCLA. At 24, I have Wisconsin. And at number 25, I do have Tulane.
Okay. I thought we didn't talk much Group of 5. South Alabama is one of the better teams in Group of 5, and Tulane handled them Saturday. Like Tulane was very impressive, and they have a chance to get a big win Saturday against Ole Miss. But so that's where we stand. We'll see how we think about things a week from now. Obviously, power ratings. You're not going to adjust wholesale on one game, but that's kind of where we have them right now.
And our power ratings, just for clarification, our power ratings isn't really based on what they did the previous week. It is based off looking at their roster, looking at their coaching staff, and lining them up on a neutral site against another team and saying, hey, neutral site, can they win this game? That's how we got our polls set up.
All right, man. I think it's time to put a bow on week 1. Week 2 has a lot of action-packed games. We got Texas, Alabama, Notre Dame, NC State, Tulane, Ole Miss, Miami, Texas A&M.
Yeah,
got a couple of late nighters with Stanford, USC, and Auburn and Cal, which was weird. But
hey, don't forget, Georgia Ball State's going to be a doozy
at noon, high noon, baby. Be there for it. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, it's going to be an awesome season. We got a lot of storylines that we're going to keep y'all updated on. We're going to do a better job of being more active on the socials, try to get you more breaking content, and we're going to be covering in-depth week to week. So please make sure you're checking in the live streams, and we will have the live streams uploaded to the podcast in case you missed it. So just stay with us. We're going to get all the information out to you that we can. It's going to be a fun season.
Yep. You see you've seen the Twitter handles on the bottom of the screen scrolling around. Be sure to follow us, and like I said at the beginning of the video, like and subscribe. Help us grow the YouTube channel. We love doing this. It's a fun thing for us, and we're hoping to grow as much as we can. We really appreciate anybody that's tuning in now. But I think we're gonna wrap up week 1 right here. We'll be back next week to recap week 2. But that is Coby Reed. This is Jackson Caudill, and the Goal Line Stand is